When I first arrived, I wasn't too sure what to expect. I was in a new unknown neighborhood and felt a little out of my comfort zone. First, I met Yesenia and some of the staff who helped me to feel more comfortable and at home. Then I was introduced to Miss Ginger, who did art with the kids. We finger-painted leaves on fall trees, colored with pastels on abstractions of their names, and made flowers out of tissue paper. While making art with these kids, I started to realize how relaxed I was becoming and the fun I felt. Freeing, I suppose you could say, which is a change from my everyday life and the political art that I create. It reminded me of this concept that I have personally been researching over the last few months. A concept that every American has been a little familiar with. I'm talking about freedom. This journey has made me question whether we truly live in the land of the free, or whether it's merely just an illusion to freedom. In a speech to Congress and as a warning to the American people, with World War II raging in Europe and Asia, Franklin D. Roosevelt stated on January 6, 1941, "This nation has placed its destiny in the hands and heads and hearts for its millions of free men and women and its faith in freedom under the guidance of God. Freedom means the supremacy of human rights everywhere. Our support goes to those who struggle to gain those rights and keep them. Our strength is our unit of purpose. To that high concept, there can be no end save victory." Usually when one criticizes the inequalities within the United States, someone usually retorts back with irrelevant information about starving children in Africa. Some will say, "Why don't you save them?" Yes, sometimes this does seem like an irrelevant change of subject, but maybe it is very relevant. What is the impact of the demands made by the wealthier consumer nations and their people upon those nations entrenched in poverty? One interesting example of how consumerism affects poorer nations is the banana industry in Latin America and in the Caribbean. Rainforest destruction is one effect, while another is a dependent economy. Where bananas are grown, they are not used to feed local people and to meet their demands. Instead, they are exported to Europe and America, leaving Latin American nations and Caribbean nations impoverished and hungry. Not to mention, it would take roughly $6 billion to provide education for all globally. To put this number in perspective, it is merely half of what Europe spent on ice cream alone, or what Europe and the United States spend solely on perfume. Clearly, two products much more valuable than education. What kind of effects is our freedom having on the world? So of course I extended my search and began to question what freedom means to some of the students and staff at Escuela VU, and whether or not they feel that we live in this so-called free nation. I found no right or wrong answers, only different perspectives from the students and staff who come from a different background than myself. Some children with parents who are immigrants or undocumented workers, staff who are immigrants or have lived here for many years, but have gained intriguing insights from everyday encounters with the Latino community. When asking the students what freedom was, I received answers such as a brain, after you get out of school, when you let your dog outside, and when you can do whatever you want. And some simply just did not know what freedom was. When I asked the children if we live in a free country, half said yes, and the other half disagreed. One staff member from Mexico said that she believes that we live in a free country because from her understanding, she is able to receive better opportunities than she would be able to in her native country. Two other staff believe that freedom means that one can be what they will and can do what they want within the boundaries of the law, and that the basic human rights should be available to everyone, regardless of race, gender, sexuality, class, etc. They both felt that we don't live in a free nation because some of these basic human rights are still not available to everyone. They also brought up SB 1070, the racist laws in Arizona that were recently passed this last summer to control Latino immigration. Consequently, I had protested against this law in Milwaukee on the day it went into effect, and while other states were looking at similar anti-immigration laws at the time. A Japanese American stated in revolt against being relocated to an internment camp in the early 1940s. If we believe in America, if we believe in equality and democracy, if we believe in law and justice, then each of us, when we see or believe errors are being made, has an obligation to make every effort to correct them. Also, if we are trying to keep Latinos out of the United States, what makes them so eager to cross the border in the first place? Similar to the Japanese at the time, Mexicans thought of and still think of America as a land of opportunity. They sang a song that gave them hope of the extravagant lives that they could live. It said, "If only you could see how nice the United States is." That is why the Mexicans are crazy about it. Your watch is on its chain, and your scarf pin in your tie, and your pockets are always filled with plenty of silver. Throughout this experience, a sense of freedom within myself is what I found. From making carefree art, engaging in fun activities and games with the students, meeting new individuals and making new connections, and being in a vulnerable state of mind that enabled me to truly experience this place that was originally out of my comfort zone. I felt a stronger sense of freedom there than in a society that encompasses my everyday life, with its simplified boundaries of what is and is not acceptable.